Hi everyone, and welcome to CS 105 Lab 8. This is our first Excel lab, so we are just going to be looking at some of the basic Excel functions. So just to get started, the first thing we're going to want to do is fill in our tax column. So it says that our tax rate is 9%. Which means that we can simply go to our first cell in this tax column, and we always start all of our functions in Excel with an equals sign. So we're going to start by plugging in our equals sign, and then we can just simply do 0.09 with a multiplication sign, multiplying that by our pre-tax amount, which we'll just click on that cell. And there's a few ways to kind of fill in the remainder of this cells. We can either just drag it straight down, or sometimes that can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes it wants to go all the way down to the page. So you can actually just go to the bottom right corner of the cell and double click, and that will fill in this formula for each of the cells below that first cell. For our total amount, we're just simply going to add our pre-tax amount and our tax amount, which we can do by simply doing an equal sign and then clicking on each of those cells. And when we drag down, that formula will then be applied to the values in the row below it. So then for our first question there, we are looking for the total of all items purchased. So for that question, we can simply use our sum function. So we can do equals sum, and then we'll just go back up to our totals column and highlight that entire column. There's also a shortcut, kind of a simpler way to do this. You can either highlight the entire column, or you can actually just click on that first cell and then click Command Shift and your down key, and that will highlight only the selection that you're looking at, as you can see here. So for our next question, we are looking for the total average amount that was spent on each day. For this question, we can use a really simple function, just average. So once again, we're going to do our equals sign, average with our parentheses, and then we're going to go back up to that totals column and either drag down to highlight the entire column, or simply just use our Command Shift down key. So for this next question, we are looking to find the total amount spent on apparel. So this is our first question that involves a condition, and since we do have a condition for this question, we're going to want to use a sum-ifs function. What the sum-ifs function does is it allows us to sum only those values that satisfy our condition. So in this case, our condition is that they are apparel. So what we can do is we can go back up to that totals column. That's going to be our sum range. Next, we're going to want to highlight our sum criteria, which is going to be in that type column. And then finally our criteria, which is apparel. And you can either click on one of the cells that has apparel in it, or you can just type apparel with quotes around it so that Excel knows that it's a text. We're going to press our enter key, and we have our answer right there. Moving on to question 6. We're looking for, similar to question 5, except we're now looking for the total amount spent at restaurants. So we're going to do the exact same thing here. We're going to go back up to our totals column. We're going to highlight those values as our sum range. Then we are going to highlight our criteria range, which is our type column. And then just to mix things up a little bit, I'm now going to click on a cell. Like I said, you can either click on the cell that has restaurants in it, or you can simply type out the text with quotes. So I'll click on that cell and press enter, and we have our value. Now for question 7. What is the total amount spent on everything except technology? So for this one, this might sound a little tricky, but there's a very simple way to do this question by actually using one of our values that we already found. So as you can see in the hint, there's multiple ways to do this. I'm going to do this by going back to our total value that we found in question 1. So if we type our equal sign, we click on that cell, and then what we can do is we can actually subtract then our total amount spent on technology. So similar to our previous 2 functions where we found the total amount spent on one item, if we take our total and we subtract the total amount spent on only technology, then that will give us our total amount on everything except technology. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our totals column. We're going to use a SUMIFS function, and we are going to highlight that totals column as our sum range. We're then going to highlight our type column as our criteria range. And then of course our criteria would just be technology. So I'm going to click on a cell that contains technology. For question 8, it asks us to find the total amount spent in September. So as you can see in the hint, we actually don't have to use a full range in this question. We can only use the cells that pertain to September. So this is very easy. All we have to do is use a sum function. We do equals sum with our parentheses. We go back up to our totals column and we highlight only those cells that have September in the date column. For question 9, we can use answers that we have previously calculated in cells C63, which is our first question that we answered, asking for the total of all the items purchased, and then also our C80 cell, which is our calculation for the total amount spent in September. Since there are only 2 dates in this data set, we can just simply take our total and subtract the September dates to find those in October. For our final question, this one looks a bit tricky, actually not too bad. All we're going to do, so we're looking for the average amount spent on everything except technology. As we can see in the hint, we can use our answer to question 7, where we already found the total amount spent on everything except technology. So now we're going to look to find the average by dividing that amount by the number of items that are everything except technology. So what we can do is we can start with our total amount spent on everything technology in question 7. We can take that amount, and then what we want to do is find the total number of items and then subtract the number of technology items. And the way that we do that is we're going to first start out with our count A function, which counts essentially all non-blank cells. So we're going to find how many items there are total. So if we just use our count A function and highlight our entire type column, and then we can do a count if. We can subtract that, which is going to give us the number of only technology items. And the COUNTIF function, we simply highlight the range, and then our second element is our criteria, which in this case is technology. So we'll type technology with our quotes, we press enter, and we have our answer. So with that, you are all finished with Lab 8.